Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, a maximum security prison, was located on Alcatraz Island in San Francisco Bay. It was nicknamed The Rock because the prison sat on a 22-acre island about 1.25 miles from the city of San Francisco. This isolation helped the prison build a reputation as inescapable, with surrounding waters ranging from 48 to 54 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, along with strong currents pulling out to sea during low tide. Over time, the prison fell into disrepair, and with limited funds for repairs, this became a crucial factor in the escape of some inmates. Let's meet the escape crew. First, we have the Anglin brothers, John William Anglin and his younger brother Clarence Anglin, both in their early 30s at the time of the escape. They were serving sentences for a bank robbery they committed together. Next, we have Frank Morris, in his mid-30s at the time of the escape, who had been abandoned as a young child, put in foster care and run away, and was then in and out of prisons since he was just 13 years old. Like the Anglins, Morris was also serving time for a bank robbery. The final member is Alan West, aged 33 during the escape. West had begun his time in prison by the age of 14 and had spent time in various federal facilities. Now that we know the escapees, let's dive into the origins of their plan. It's said that West approached Morris in early 1960 with an idea to escape. West reportedly knew about a ventilator cover above cell block B that might not be sealed with concrete, unlike other vents. If true, this could give them access to the roof. West's work with the cell house maintenance crew also gave him a deep understanding of the building's structure, layout, and vulnerabilities. By September 1961, the Anglin brothers, Morris, and West had all been moved to neighboring cells in cell block B, directly under the unsecured vent cover. Their requests for these moves were approved. Although the exact roles in planning are unclear, one thing is certain: the escape plan was bold and ingenious. Escaping Alcatraz wasn't just about getting past the walls. The men also had to make it back to the mainland and evade capture. To buy themselves time, the escapees crafted dummy heads made from a mix of soap, concrete, and other materials, complete with human hair. These heads were placed in their beds to fool the guards. On the morning of June 12, when the 7 a.m. bell sounded, the guards thought the escapees were still asleep. It wasn't until a guard tried to wake Morris and the head rolled off the bed that they realized something was wrong. The damaged dummy head still bears the impact from that fall. It's unknown who came up with the idea for the dummies, but Clarence, who worked as a barber, likely sourced the human hair used. After placing the dummies, the men worked on escaping their cells. Each man had a ventilation grate about 5 inches by 9.5 inches in the back of his cell. West, likely due to his maintenance role, knew the wall around the grate was less than 6 inches thick, so the men could enlarge the hole to fit through. For months, they had drilled closely spaced holes around the grate using makeshift tools like kitchen spoons and a drill made from a vacuum cleaner motor. These holes allowed them to remove a small section of the wall, which they concealed with musical instruments and cardboard covers. These holes let the men crawl into a utility corridor behind their cells, which was usually unguarded. From there, they climbed to a hidden landing area above their cell block, where they had been secretly working for months. Some of the inmates had permission to do maintenance in this area, and West even completed part of a painting job there. He convinced guards to let him hang blankets to catch dust, though the blankets were really hiding the escape preparations. This concealed landing became their workshop, where they built the dummy heads, tools, and other escape items. They even used a homemade periscope to act as lookouts. On the night of the escape, West never made it to the landing due to a final part of his wall being unbreakable, leaving him behind. From the landing, the ceiling was 30 feet overhead, and the men climbed to it via pipes to access an air vent they had pried open earlier. Around 10:30 p.m., experts believe the vent cover was pushed off the roof, marking the time the escapees reached the top of the building. They descended the roof using a pipe, climbed the 15-foot fence, and made their way to the north shore of the island. In their workshop, the escapees had built life preservers and a 6 by 14-foot rubber raft using over 50 raincoats. They stitched them together with sewing machines and vulcanized the seams with heat from steam pipes, an idea taken from popular mechanics. The raft was inflated with a concertina that Morris ordered in April. The plan was to paddle across San Francisco Bay to Angel Island, 2 miles north, and then cross the half-mile-wide Raccoon Strait to reach the mainland, where they intended to steal a car and clothes, according to West, who later informed the FBI. Once the men were discovered missing, Alcatraz went into lockdown. Guards quickly found the secret workshop, the ceiling hole, and footprints on the roof and at the base of the pipe. The FBI, Coast Guard, and prison authorities launched a wide-scale search, but neither the escapees nor their raft were ever seen again. While it's known that they made it off Alcatraz, what happened next remains a mystery. That being said, let's get into the theories, of which there are only two. That the men escaped and survived, or that they perished in the journey over to the mainland. Let's start with the latter. The cold waters and strong currents of the bay would have been significant challenges. Experts note that their goal of reaching Angel Island was difficult, especially without a rudder on their raft. A PBS reenactment of the escape by Dutch scientists used a similar raft, and they found that 2 men would need to keep the raft inflated while only one paddled. The water temperature that night was around 54 degrees Fahrenheit, and experts believe the men would have lasted about 2 hours before succumbing to hypothermia. On June 12, pieces of wood resembling a handmade paddle were found near Angel Island. 2 days later, bags made from raincoats were found between Alcatraz and Angel Island. These bags contained personal items belonging to the escapees, including photos and a list of contacts. The discovery of these items suggested the escape might have failed, as these personal items were unlikely to be discarded. More evidence came on June 15, when a life vest was found near Cronkite Beach, and another was found on June 22, still tied. The lack of thefts or holdups linked to the escapees also cast doubt on whether they made it to the mainland alive. The FBI, which spent years investigating the case, found no credible evidence of the escapees' survival. In July 1962, the crew of a Norwegian freighter, the SS Norefell, reported seeing a body in the ocean about 20 miles from the Golden Gate Bridge, but it was not reported until months later, and the body was never recovered. Though, there is plenty of credence to our second theory, that the escapees survived. Morris and the Anglin brothers had a raft to help them navigate the waters, which many people have successfully been able to swim before without the benefit of a raft or life jacket. The model found that there was a very narrow window between 11:30 p.m. and midnight during which the trio would have needed to launch their raft in order to have a chance of making it to land. And since the inmates may have made it to the roof by 10:30 p.m., this window seems possible. Though, even then, they would have had to let the currents carry them to Horseshoe Bay, northeast of the Golden Gate Bridge, rather than trying to reach Angel Island. The model also suggested that items left at the shoreline near Horseshoe Bay would drift back towards Angel Island, where some of the escapees' items were recovered once the tides reversed. And while the Dutch scientists' real-life recreation of the escape did not work, as they were unable to withstand the currents and bring the raft to land, they still got fairly close to Golden Gate Bridge in a little over an hour aboard the raft. one of the scientists conceded. He still believes the escapees might have been able to pull it off given the rush of adrenaline and need to survive. David Widner, the nephew of the Anglin brothers, has said that his uncle Robert, one of John and Clarence's older brothers, confessed on his deathbed to his sisters, quote, that they didn't have to worry about their brothers, that he had been in touch with them and they were okay. End quote. Widner added that his grandmother, who would have been John and Clarence Anglin's mother, would sometimes receive roses with her son's signatures on the card following the 1962 escape. Multiple family members of John and Clarence Anglin have claimed over the years at family funerals that they have noticed mysterious women wearing veils and/or heavy makeup, which could have been the undercover Anglin brothers coming to pay their respects. In 2015, a History Channel show claimed that a photo taken of two men in Brazil 13 years after the escape depicted brothers John and Clarence Anglin alive. The photograph came from Fred Brizzi, a childhood friend of the Anglin brothers, who turned it over to the family sometime in the 1990s. Brizzi's story is that he was on a trip in Brazil when he happened to run into John and Clarence at a bar. Brizzi has since passed away. Many in the Anglin family have held on to the belief that John and Clarence survived the escape. They also believe the photo shows John and Clarence. An expert connected with the History Channel show concluded that the photo showed the Anglin brothers. The U.S. Marshal's Office investigated the claim. Their experts do not believe the photo depicts John and Clarence. However, they acknowledge that a solid determination isn't really possible given the age and wear to the photo and the fact that the subjects are wearing sunglasses. As for the aftermath of the escape, Alan West, the inmate left behind, cooperated with officials in the search, finishing serving his sentence across 3 different prisons following Alcatraz, and was released in 1967. But he remained free for only 1 year before landing himself concurrent sentences of 5 years, 1 to 3 years, and life for grand larceny and robbery. He died in 1978. Alcatraz shut down in March 1963, less than a year after the Anglin Morris escape. The FBI officially closed their case on the 1962 escape from Alcatraz on December 31, 1979, over 15 years after their investigation began. However, they add, quote, "It's one mystery we'd all like to solve." End quote. The case is expected to remain open with federal marshals until either the fugitives are arrested, evidence of their deaths is found, or the fugitives reach 99 years of age. In the end, nobody truly knows if the enterprising bunch of Alcatraz escapees completed their journey, or if their midnight voyage was ill-fated. For now, the case remains unsolved.